evening, Philippines, and good day, world. It's Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023, and you're watching Newsline World. I'm Federico Veloso.
And I'm Deivid Lira. We are here to bring you the top stories we gather from all over the globe.
Pastor Quiboloy says he and SMNI remain committed to helping the government fight communist terrorist groups.
Pastor ACQ say the recanted testimony of two young rebels should be prosecuted, calling it untrustworthy.
India issues a stern ultimatum to Canada regarding its envoys.
U.S. Supreme Court rejected a disqualification case against former U.S. President Trump, but the battle is not over yet as he's still facing another civil fraud case involving his son.
Brazil and China made history by transacting using the Chinese yuan. This and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. In the news, the damages to the CPP-NPA-NDF attacks in Davao City are greater, unlike the confidential funds of Vice President Sara Duterte's term when she was still mayor, according to Pastor Quiboloy. Pastor Apollo also questioned leftist lawmaker Franz Castro as to why she's not complaining about the brutality and killings of these terrorist groups. Jason Brubrico has the details.
Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy slammed ACT Teachers Party List representative Franz Castro in his recent live broadcast of Powerline. This is after Castro called on the Commission on Audit to investigate the alleged 2.697 billion peso confidential funds of Davao City under the term of Vice President Duterte when she was a mayor. According to Pastor Apollo, they can only question the said fund if they have evidence that it was pocketed by Vice President Duterte.
So what? So anong reklamo mo? Magreklamo ka kung meron kang mapakitang ebidensya na binulsa ni Sara, VP Sara, ang pera dito sa 2.697 billion. Malngal ka, paniniwalaan kita. Pagka may ebidensya ka.
Based on the audit report of COA on Davao City from 2016 to 2022, no adversarial findings or wrong use of the funds were found during the said period. The COA also did not issue any notices of these allowances. After all, according to Pastor Apollo, the damage caused by the CPP-NPA-NDF in Davao City is even greater, from the bombing of the San Pedro Cathedral and the Rojas Night Market to the burning of the properties of Lapanday Industries. Pastor Apollo then questioned Castro as to why she does not complain or even talk about the brutality and killings committed by the communist terrorist group CPP-NPA-NDF.
Ano ngayon? Anong reklamo? Yung para sa iyo malaki na yan? Mas malaki ang kasiraan ng NPA ginawa sa amin dito.
Amen.
Mas malaki yung pambobomba namin dito. Malaking halaga, mga buhay ang namatay. Kung ilang bilyon ang mga kasiraang ginawa nila dito sa aming syudad. Mga buhay na pinaslang, napakarami. Kwentahin mo yung mga buhay na yon. Na kung wala itong confidential fund na to, na walang adversarial findings ang COA, ginamit sa tama, hindi kami maging mapayapa dito. O ngayon, nagrereklamo ka? Bakit di ka magreklamo sa kabulastugan at pamamaslang ng NPA?
Because of Vice President Duterte's proper spending of the said fund when she was mayor, Pastor Apollo said Davao became a peaceful city. For Pastor Apollo, Castro is only complaining about the confidential funds because it was through these funds that she was caught doing certain acts.
Ikaw, nahuli ka nga eh. Human trafficking yata yun. Child trafficking. Abduction pa, tingnan mo. Bakit nandyan ka? Anong ginagawa ninyo? Kung walang confidential fund, malaya ka na makapaggagawa sa ginagawa mo.
The good pastor added that leftist groups do not want confidential funds because they do not want peace and they prefer chaos. Pastor Apollo said the said group is also making the confidential funds an issue because they are afraid that Vice President Duterte will become president in 2028.
Tapos ginagawa ninyong issue dahil kayo ay natatakot sa kanyang siya maging presidente for 2028. Kasi kayo, pag naging presidente siya for 2028, yari kayo lahat NPA. Tapos kayo. Ayaw ninyo yun. Oh. Hindi ninyo magaganon-ganon ang ulo ni VP Inday.
For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
Vice President Sara Duterte's support group with millions of members has condemned the attacks on the Vice President. MJ Madahar reports.
Nalulungkot kami kasi una, yung binabato kay Inday, VP Inday na yung regarding sa confidential intelligence fund, no? Sa ano kasi namin is pabayaan muna natin na uusad yung ng COA bago natin siya kasi as of now trial by publicity siya ngayon eh.
These are the words of Vic Noval, one of the leaders of the Sara All Parallel Group after Vice President Sara Duterte has been inundated with criticisms. According to Noval, they can no longer tolerate the attacks on the Vice President, which is why they decided to come forward. He mentioned that their group has 4 to 7 million members from over 700 parallel organizations across the Philippines who support VP Sara. They find it unacceptable that issues regarding confidential funds are being used against the Vice President, especially when they know that sympathizers of the government's opponents are behind these attacks on the younger Duterte.
Sinisiraan siya ng grupong Makabayan Black kasi alam nila na medyo sila yung tatamaan sa CIF ni VP Inday. Kasi I'm sure yung lahat ng mga programa ni VP Inday is para sa mga kabataan.
The left-leaning organizations in Congress are merely looking for ways to discredit the Vice President for their own ambitions. The group also criticized Senator Rizon Taveros, who has also been scrutinizing the confidential funds of the OVP and DepEd, especially since Ontiveros has unresolved issues related to PhilHealth, which she has yet to explain.
Wala siya sa posisyon na mag-question sa kay VP Inday. Kasi as of now, hindi pa nga niya na-explain kung ano nangyari doon sa bonus na 1.6 na ginawa nilang bonus sa PhilHealth. 1.6 billion na until now. Hindi pa niya na-explain yan eh.
Now that those they referred to as having ambitions in the upcoming elections are operating against VP Inday, the Sara All Parallel Group say they won't stay silent.
Sa amin lang, basta papaalam lang namin kay VP Inday na mahal namin siya at hanggang sa huli ang suporta na ibibigay namin sa kanya.
The group also calls on President Bongbong Marcos Jr. to support VP Sara against those who are attacking her. For God and my beloved Philippines, I'm Jay Mondihar, SMNI News.
Pastor Apollo Quiboloy of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ does not believe the testimonies of the two young rebels, Jed Tamano and Jolina Castro. Kai Villan reports.
Pastor Apollo Quiboloy of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ does not believe the recanted testimonies of the two young rebels, Jed Tamano and Jolina Castro. According to Pastor Apollo, the Armed Forces of the Philippines is an honorable organization and it is not foolish to present the two surrendering individuals to the media if they were coerced or threatened. This statement comes after the two rebels sought protection from the Supreme Court, alleging that they were abducted by the Philippine Army and did not surrender willingly.
Hindi ako naniniwala sa dalawang ito eh. Ang mukha lang mukhang sinungaling eh. Hindi mapagkatiwala ng mukha nila. Sa isip ninyo, ang Armed Forces of the Philippines, mga bobo. Alam mo, dinukot mo to. Alam mo, tinorture mo to. Alam mo, pinakonfess mo na hindi tama. Napilitan lang sila, alam mo yun. Kung yun ang kanilang akusasyon, totoo. Matapos isasalang mo sa media, alam mo, napilitan lang sila. Tapos isasalang muli sa media, may camera pa, nandiyan ka pa sa tabi nila. Hindi ganun kabobo ang AAFP. Hindi rin ako ganun kabobo magtingin. Lohika.
It should be noted that more than a week has passed since they surrendered to the government and recanted their testimonies. According to Pastor Apollo, the two individuals should be charged for recanting their testimonies.
Dapat kasuhan kayo sa ginawa ninyo sa pagbabaligtad. Loko-loko bang AFP? Ganun ang testimony ninyo. Dinukot, tinorture, pinilit. Pagkatapos, pinilit sumulat. Tapos isasalang kayo sa media.
According to the good pastor, the two are pitiful because they are being used for the interests of others.
Mahirap ang kinalalagyan ninyo. Itinaya kayo nung mga nasa likod ninyong sumutsot sa inyo. Akala nyo may pagtatanggol nila kayo?
The good pastor also wishes that the two would realize the seriousness of the case they are facing.
Sana'y matauhan kayo at mahirap tong kaso nyo, ha? Pagsisinungan, perjury yan. Kada sinungaling nyo, 6 years yan. Every sentence na ginawa mo, patotohanan mo. At hindi mo lang patotohanan sa pamamagitan ng salita. Hearsay yun. Sa korte, hindi yung istorya ang pakikinggan ebidensya It's not in the court, it's not what you say. It is what you can prove. Through evidences. Nako, mahirap ang kinalalagyan niyo.
Turkey called the Philippine Army and the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict initially stated that they would file charges against the two young individuals. However, in case they decide to return to the fold of the law, the government will welcome them. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines. Kai Villan, SMNI News.
The Bureau of Plant Industry said there are indications that the existing price cap on rice may be lifted following an increased supply in the country's local harvest. MJ Madaha reports from Malacanang.
We are expecting an increased supply of our local harvest coming this last quarter for October, November, and the rest of the year.
That's the forecast of the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Plant and Industry regarding the rice supply in the Philippines. According to DA-BPI Director Glenn Panganiban, the export price of rice in the global market has also decreased. The government anticipates a higher rice supply this October.
We are expecting almost 1.9 million metric tons of rice for this month, so that will jump our days to last or our supply of rice to 74 days. It increased from 52 last September.
As a result, the DA now sees indications that President Bongbong Marcos may consider removing the price cap on rice. The DA-BPI will provide this recommendation to the President on whether the rice price cap should be lifted. But what's clear now is that there are parameters of an improvement in rice supply.
Well, yun yung indication from our parameters naman ay mukhang ready na. But of course, it's all upon the President to decide on it.
Aid for rice retailers will continue, even if the President suspends the price cap.
With that, officials from the DA-BPI said that President Bongbong Marcos will decide as soon as possible on the lifting of EO 39. For God of the Beloved Philippines, I'm Jay Mondiha, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, Turkey conducted airstrikes in Iraq in a response to a terrorist attack near to the Interior Ministry in Ankara, targeting strongholds of Kurdish militants. Andrea Santos tells us more.
Turkey launched airstrikes in Iraq on Monday in response to a terrorist attack near its interior ministry in Ankara. Turkish warplanes destroyed 20 targets used by terrorists in northern Iraq, targeting suspected strongholds of the Kurdistan Workers' Party or PKK. Turkey's goal is to stop the PKK and other terrorist groups, prevent attacks from northern Iraq, and protect its borders. The attack in Ankara involved a suicide bomber, and the PKK claimed responsibility. Although there were no deaths, 2 police officers were injured. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned the act, saying it aimed to scare Turks but won't succeed. The PKK has been fighting for independence in southeast Turkey and parts of Iraq and Syria since the 1980s. This attack happened as Turkey's parliament discussed Sweden's NATO membership, which is on hold. Ankara wants Sweden to fight Islamophobia and hand over PKK-linked suspects. Sweden's Foreign Minister Tobias Billström condemned the attack and promised to support Turkey in fighting terrorism. Reporting, this is Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
A pro-Russia-Japanese lawmaker traveled to meet a senior Russian official in Moscow. Ria Saito has the details.
A Japanese lawmaker who has close ties with Russia traveled to Moscow for the first time to meet a senior Russian foreign ministry official. Muneo Suzuki, opposition member of the Japan Innovation Party, met with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko in Moscow. This is the first time that a Japanese lawmaker visited Russia since it launched its so-called special military operation in Ukraine. Suzuki, who is from Hokkaido, Japan, arrived in Russia last Sunday. He is set to go back to Japan Thursday. Suzuki is a longtime champion of close ties with Russia. He considered visiting the said country in the spring of 2023, but stopped short of making such a trip at the request of the leadership of his party. In a press conference, Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno said that the Japanese government discourages its citizens from traveling to Russia, regardless of the reason or the purpose of their visit. Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa meanwhile said that Suzuki did not disclose his plans to the government in advance. Suzuki's trip had been reported to the upper house in advance but not to the government. Japan Innovation Party said it is considering taking disciplinary action against Suzuki for failing to comply with the necessary travel procedures with the party when traveling abroad. Ahead of his departure, Suzuki attended a gathering in Tokyo last Friday, wherein he said that he will face Russia and continue to make correct decisions regarding the relations between Tokyo and Moscow. 以上、日本からセトリアニュースをお伝えしました。SMNI News, Japan.
North Korea is blaming the United States for the attack against Cuba that took place on U.S. soil last week. Kim Sang reports.
North Korea has accused the United States of letting a terrorist act against Cuba happen on its own soil, and that this happened because, according to Pyongyang, the incident was the result of despicable anti-Cuban U.S. intentions. A spokesperson from North Korea's foreign ministry said that the United States has neglected to ensure the safety of the Cuban mission and that it was only keen to put countries that it does not like, such as Cuba, on its list of state sponsors of terrorism. To recall, on September 24th, embassy officials reported that an unidentified person threw 2 Molotov cocktails at the Cuban embassy building. There was no fire or significant damage to the building and no arrests have been made. Meanwhile, North Korea's spokesperson said that the incident was a grave terrorist attack which follows the pattern of a 2020 incident on the same Cuban embassy in which a Cuban man who sought asylum in the U.S. opened fire with a rifle, spraying almost 3 dozen rounds of bullets at the front of the building. The North Korean official also said that Washington should acknowledge the blame for not only the recent incident but also all the past terrorist cases and prove their truth to show its sincerity, rather than focusing on naming countries as state sponsors of terrorism. It can be noted that countries like Cuba, Syria, Iran, and North Korea are on the U.S. State Department list of state sponsors of terrorism. Meanwhile, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the U.S. strongly condemns the said terrorist attack and that U.S. authorities would investigate. Reports said no one was in custody as the probe continued. Solisubaga Kim Sang Imnida, SMNI News, South Korea.
The Philippines has reportedly opened numerous export opportunities, and according to the DA-BPI chief, this is thanks to President Bongbong Marcos' leadership as Agriculture Secretary. MJ Mondeja has the details.
It has only been a little over a year since the Marcos Jr. administration, and the Philippines has been a series of export opportunities open up. According to the DA Bureau of Plant Industry, one of these opportunities is exporting durian to China and the revival of mango exports to Australia. The latest export market for Philippine avocados is South Korea. The DABPI mentioned that negotiations for avocado exports took a whopping 14 years.
That was negotiated for 14 years, and it took really the president, the push of the president, of course, the efforts natin sa department.
The export deal for Philippine durian to China is valued at over $500 million. Meanwhile, mango exports to Australia were on hold for 10 years. But all of these have resumed under the Marcos Jr. administration. According to the DABPI, they're also not neglecting the country's traditional export products.
Our export industries are still alive. Of course, ang ating superstars dyan, yung bananas natin, $1 billion a year, pineapples, coconuts. So we are continuing to support that.
DABPI is calling for additional funding from Congress to strengthen the government's high-value crops program. Meanwhile, Director Panganiban said he does not know who will be appointed as the new Agriculture Secretary, amid reports of a new secretary being appointed. But if you ask the guy, President Bongbong Marcos' leadership as Agriculture Secretary is enough.
He's the first president who's really going to the grounds, meeting with the people, even sa distribution nga ng bigas, andun siya eh. So I think nararamdaman ng tao ang ating presidente.
For Ganamabal of Philippines, MJ Mondihap, SMNI News.
Japan has seen a price increase in thousands of food items. This is higher compared to the previous month. Kyoko Hashimoto tells us more.
Over 4,000 food and beverage items are subject to price hikes in Japan starting in October. Some 195 food and beverage makers have announced plans to raise prices for 4,634 items as of Friday, up from 2,148 items at the end of August. Japan's Seikoku Databank said in its latest online report. This wave of price increases mainly involves daily foodstuffs. 3 major ham manufacturers in Japan raised the prices of ham products this October, with the increase reaching a maximum of 25%. Meanwhile, the price of cooking oil has increased by more than 50%. By the end of September, a total of 31,000 types of food have seen price hikes across Japan this year, exceeding last year's total number of foodstuffs that increased their prices. The main reason for the price increases are mainly attributed to higher raw material prices and rising transportation costs. October also saw prices go up in various areas of Japan's service industry. Various commuter rail operators in the Tokyo metropolitan area have increased fares starting Sunday, with an average increase of more than 10%. Tokyo Disneyland, one of Japan's famous amusement park, has also increased the price of their highest tier ticket by around 16%. 以上、橋本京子日本から報告いたしました。SMNI News, Japan.
The U.S. Supreme Court rejected a candidate's bid to disqualify ex-President Donald Trump in the 2024 elections. Meanwhile, on another case, Trump and his sons face a civil fraud trial in Manhattan. Mike Dennis Oliveira reports live. Mike?
Good evening, Fred. As you have mentioned, the former U.S. President Donald Trump survived a case filed against him that would have barred him from seeking re-election over stance of the insurrection incident in 2021.
The U.S. Supreme Court has made a decision not to prevent former President Donald Trump from seeking re-election in 2024. A Texas Republican candidate, John Anthony Castro, tried to have Trump barred from running again. Castro said Trump's support for the rioters on January 6, 2021 went against the 14th Amendment, which prevents people who engaged in insurrection from holding office. But the Supreme Court said no to Castro's request without giving reasons. Earlier, a Florida court and a court in Georgia had also said no to Castro's case. Castro is not a well-known politician. Meanwhile, other groups are also trying to stop Trump from appearing on the ballot in their states. Even though Trump is facing legal troubles, he hasn't been charged with insurrection. None of the people charged in connection with the January 6 events have been accused of trying to overthrow the government. In a separate case, Trump and his sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, are facing a civil fraud trial in New York. The state's Attorney General, Letitia James, argued that Trump exaggerated his assets to inflate his net worth to secure better loan and insured terms. Attorney General James is seeking at least $250 million in fines, a permanent ban against Trump and his sons Eric and Donald Jr. from running businesses in New York, and a 5-year commercial real estate ban against Trump and the Trump Organization.
No one is above the law, and it is my responsibility and my duty and my job to enforce it. The law is both powerful and fragile, and today in court we will prove our case. I thank you all for being here, and again, justice will prevail. Thank you.
So keep hitting him, because he's going to keep fighting. At the end of the day, we have a judge that has told us that Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. He has failed to acknowledge what the appellate division has said, and we will continue to fight in hopes that there is some level of law and order in this country at this point.
As the trial continues, Trump expressed disappointment that he does not have a jury, which is uncommon in the United States. He highlighted the judge's remarks regarding the statute of limitations.
I built a great company, it did great things for New York, and they should respect that. I've employed thousands and thousands of people in New York, and they should respect that. The Attorney General of this state is a disgrace. Letitia James is a disgrace. She's a disgrace to our country and to the state of New York. She should focus on all of the violent crime and the murders going on in New York, not on somebody that paid back the banks in full without a default, and in many cases paid them back early. Thank you very much, everybody.
Fred, Trump will signal that he will be in court again on Tuesday morning in a post on Truth Social. Back to you, Fred.
Thank you. That's Mayk, Dennis Oliveira live on SMNI Studios.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez will not be fooled by allies of the CPP, NPA, and DF. This is what Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy believes following the courtesy visit made by the Makabayan bloc to Romualdez. Carlo de la Peña reports.
Hindi naman siguro siya ganun kabobo na papaloko siya, no? Kasi nasa pamahalaan siya.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez will not be deceived by allies of the terrorist groups CPP, NPA, and DF. This is the belief of Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy following the courtesy visit made by the so-called Makabayan bloc to Romualdez. During his Powerline program on Tuesday, October 3, the good pastor was asked about his thoughts in the said meeting. It can be recalled that Teddy Casino posted on Twitter photos of the Makabayan bloc's visit to Romualdez. Casino mentioned that the group's visit was to call for the realignment of the 2.95 billion pesos confidential and intelligence funds for the proposed 2024 budget towards health, education, agriculture, and social services. This move received various criticisms from the public. Pastor Apollo meanwhile said,
Hindi natin pwedeng i-judge kaagad na gano'n. Pero yung mga tao hindi mo maiwasan yung mga opinion ng nakararami, no? Na ma-accommodate sila ng ating Speaker of the House. So, bilang Pilipino, pwede mong tanggapin ng kahit sino. Kahit pamukhang satanas siya, kung siya'y Pilipino, nagkusang loob naman, ng magandang loob na mag-courtesy call, tanggapin mo. Ang tanong lang dyan, kasabwat na ba siya ng dahil sa pagkikitang ito sa mga makakaliwang grupong ito?
While Pastor Apollo believes that Romualdez won't be deceived, the Makabayan bloc, known as the front organization of the CPP, NPA, and DF, gained confidence against Vice President Sara Duterte losing her proposed confidential and intelligence fund.
Lumakas ang loob nila, nagkaroon sila ng kaalyado, ang House Speaker na naging kaibigan na nila ngayon. Lumakas ang loob nila, pati na ang Confi Fund ng Davao City. Gusto na nilang kalkalin. Lumakas sila. Mamamayagpag na naman sila. Ang delikado rito, pag lumakas na naman ng NPA at nagkaroon pa ng funding, na dahil maluwang na naman sila, ayan ang dapat bantayan. Kasi ayaw na talaga ng taong bayan ang CPP, NPA, NDF. Gusto nila mawala ng salot na ito, teroristang grupong ito, sa balat ng lupa ng Pilipinas.
Pastor Apollo emphasized the need for the House Speaker to have discernment to understand the Makabayan bloc's intentions.
Kung ikaw ay Speaker, meron kang kung ikaw for nation building, meron kang discernment kung ano ang pakay nila at layunin. Baka gamitin lang ako nito para maging ganito, etc. etc. Ang resulta, nakita natin, nawala ang confit fund, hindi na patuloy, nagtagumpay sila. Hindi ko na sinasabing naloko nila at nabola nila ang ating House Speaker. Hindi ko sinasabi yun. Ang sinasabi ko lang, naging matagumpay ang kanilang pagbisita.
Following the courtesy visit, the House of Representatives realigned the requested confidential fund for the Office of the Vice President and Department of Education, amounting to 650 million pesos. Meanwhile, Pastor Apollo reiterated that he and SMNI will continue to defend the government against the CPP, NPA, NDF.
Tayo naman, ako naman at sa SMNI, pinagtatanggol natin ang pamahalaan. Alang-alang ipagtatanggol ko ang makakaliwang itong alam kong kaalyado ng mga front ng CPP, NPA, NDF. Kung nakipagkaibigan sa kanila at naging kaalyado nila at naging kaakibat nila sa kanilang mga plano o nalin lang siya, anong magiging kalalagayan niya? Anong mapapaliwanag niya sa ating bayan? Na-convert siya? Yun ang tanong. Magiging kalaban na ba natin ang ating House Speaker because of this? Taong bayan ang sasagot noon, hindi ako.
Pastor Apollo added that forming alliances with known allies of the CPP, NPA, NDF would erode the trust of the people, which he doesn't want to happen to the current administration.
The conclusion belongs to the Filipino people. Bubulusok ka talaga. Mawawala ang kumpiyansa ng taong bayan sa iyo. Ayaw nating mangyari yun. Gusto natin na manatiling malakas, mapayapa ang ating bansa at ang ating mga leader na naririyan, ay gusto nating manatili sila sa trust ng ating bansang Pilipinas.
For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
In its latest assessment, the United States warned a new Iran's capacity to create nuclear weapons in less than 2 weeks. The report was published at a time when talks to revive the abandoned nuclear program between Iran and the world powers continue to face deadlock. Mayk has the details.
Assalamu alaikum. U.S. Department of Defense once again sounded the alarm of Iran's technological know-how and the necessary infrastructure it possesses to produce nuclear weapons in record time. Titled 2023 Strategy for Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction, the report issued by the U.S. military revealed that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapons program at this time, but can produce enough fissile material for a nuclear device in less than 2 weeks. In the same report, the U.S. also blamed Iran for violating its obligations made under the Chemical Weapons Convention, an international treaty that seeks to eliminate an entire category of weapons of mass destruction, or WMD. The U.S. military has issued the same warning multiple times this year. In June, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned that America will not let Iran possess nuclear weapons. Tehran, on the other hand, previously stated that the purpose of its nuclear program is to generate power and that any other use would be considered a violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, of which it is a signatory. Meanwhile, the United States is also known to possess 3 types of WMD, which include nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons deployed in its land, air, and sea territories. After months of deadlock, Iran's supreme leader last week gave the negotiators the signal that Tehran is ready for face-to-face talks with the U.S. in its nuclear program. Barakallahu fikum jami'an, kan hada Melchizedek Kadi sa Akhbar SMNI, Kuwait.
Warm and gusty winds are provoking bushfires in the southeastern Australian state of Victoria. Local officials told residents to evacuate, or if it's too late to do so, to take shelters from raging fires. Andrea Santos reports.
flee or take shelter. This was the critical advice given by local officials for residents in Victoria on Tuesday, as wind gusts of about 50 miles per hour were reported around East Gippsland near eastern Melbourne. Local officials earlier today issued evacuation orders for 9 rural neighborhoods, saying the fires were threatening homes and lives. Meanwhile, people from another 7 neighborhoods who hadn't left their homes yet were told to take shelter immediately because it was already too late to leave. As per the state's country fire authority, about 650 firefighters were battling fires across 17,000 hectares of land within the past 24 hours. Australian firefighters are preparing for another fierce bushfire season since the deadly black summer blazes of 2019 to 2020, which killed dozens of people and billions of animals. Reporting, this is Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, various government agencies in Finland are testing their preparedness in the event of a sudden wave of migrants arriving the country's eastern border with Russia. Kirby Hill Trinidad has the details.
Dubbed Laro 23, the joint preparedness exercise focused on Finland's readiness to handle a major migrant influx into the country's borders in a short period of time. The Finnish Border Guard led the initiative in partnership with the Defense Forces and the Finnish Immigration Services, to name a few. The 5-day exercise started on October 2nd and ended on October 6th. Some 1,000 people are participating in Laro 23, including representatives from the European Border and Coast Guard Agency Frontex, as well as the Estonian Police and Border Guard. The drill was made amid concerns that Finland's eastern border with Russia could be targeted by a wave of migrants. To note, some 32,000 asylum seekers arrived in Finland during Europe's migration crisis in 2015. In April of this year, Finland built the first stretch of a fence on its border with Russia, less than 2 weeks after it joined the NATO military alliance.
This is an historic day. We welcome Finland as the newest member of our alliance. We will raise...
This has been Kirby Hill Trinidad, SMNI News.
In the latest escalation of the India-Canada diplomatic spat, New Delhi made a stern warning to Ottawa, demanding that it should be repatriate dozens of its envoys, or else they will lose diplomatic immunity. Jane Cognita reports.
India has issued a strong warning to Canada, demanding that Canada pull out 41 of its diplomats from India by October 10. This tension arises from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's accusation of Indian government involvement in the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India's ultimatum, reported by the Financial Times, comes with a significant consequence. If the Canadian envoys do not leave the country as instructed, they may lose their diplomatic immunity. Currently, Canada has 62 diplomats in India, and New Delhi aims to reduce this number considerably. The dispute started weeks ago with the expulsion of top diplomats from both countries. India's Ministry of External Affairs had previously called for equal diplomatic presence, emphasizing the large gap between the number of Canadian diplomats in India compared to Indian diplomats in Canada. In addition, India imposed a visa ban on Canadians shortly after Prime Minister Trudeau made allegations on September 18. This further strained Canada-India relations. Canada's allies, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, have noted the diplomatic tension. They have urged India to cooperate in the investigation of Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder in Surrey. Nijjar was a Khalistani activist and a wanted terrorist by India. Indian authorities said Nijjar was involved in the Khalistan separatist movement and had gained Canadian citizenship despite forging his real identity. On June 18, 2023, Nijjar was shot by 2 unidentified men in a parking lot in Surrey, Canada. India strongly denied Canada's allegation, calling them absurd and motivated. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar also cautioned UN member states against letting political convenience influence responses to terrorism, extremism, and violence during the 78th session of the UN General Assembly in New York on September 26. Reporting, this has been Jane Cognita, SMNI News.
3 people died and 6 others were injured after a 14-year-old suspected gunman opened fire at a popular shopping mall in Thailand on Tuesday. Chatbonggan Pisamagazon has the details.
Police have arrested a male teenager who went on a shooting spree at a luxury shopping mall in central Bangkok earlier today. In a video making rounds online, terrified shoppers could be seen fleeing from the mall after an armed gunman opened fire inside Siam Paragon. The shooting rampage killed 3 people and wounded 6 others, with more than 10 rounds of gunshots heard, according to witnesses. Police arrested a 14-year-old suspected gunman who laid down his weapon and surrendered without a struggle. Data released by Switzerland-based Small Arms Survey in 2017 revealed that gun ownership in Thailand is high compared with other countries in Southeast Asia, with more than 10.3 million civilians in possession of firearms, or around 15 guns for every 100 people nationwide. Mass shootings in Thailand are rare. A gun and knife attack at a child care center in October 2022, which killed at least 36 people, was believed to be the deadliest of its kind. รายงานจากกรุงเทพมหานคร นายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMS ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
Chinese embassies across the world held individual celebrations in their respective countries to commemorate the 74th founding anniversary of the People's Republic of China. Anissa de Guzman reports.
Members of the international community have praised China's efforts in promoting global development and spoke highly of the country's impact on regional and global development. From Asia, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, South America, and North America, Chinese embassies from different parts of the world held respective ceremonies to commemorate China's 74th founding anniversary. Among those nations that held individual celebrations in their respective territories include Greece, Israel, Bogota, South Africa, Argentina, Senegal, Brazil, Pakistan, Hungary, Honduras, as well as the UAE, Vietnam, Myanmar, Fiji, Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Mexico, and Costa Rica.
On behalf of the State of Israel, I'm delighted to offer my warmest congratulations to the Chinese Embassy in Israel, to President Xi Jinping, and to the entire Chinese people as we mark the joyful occasion of the National Day of the People's Republic of China.
It's a very important initiative which was launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, and 10 years later we can see some tangible results across the globe. In Greece, for example, the country where we are now based, we can see the port of Piraeus, which was a small port many years ago and now is one of the biggest ports in the Mediterranean.
The development trajectory of China has been extraordinary over the last couple of decades and a real inspiration, I think, to developing countries around the world like Kenya. So really to wish you all the very best for the 74th. Looking forward, of course, to next year.
Actually, his address is a very, very important. President Xi Jinping is a visionary leader. He is a global leader. He is a very popular leader in the entire world. Many people are also focusing on his speech. And he wants to resolve the problems and issues are faced by common men and women of the whole world. I believe this is the reason for his popularity.
A flag-raising ceremony was held at the Tiananmen Square in the Chinese capital on Sunday, October 1st, where the national flag was escorted solemnly into the square by 96 members of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, PLA, Guard of Honor. The so-called economic powerhouse of Asia was founded on October 1st, 1049, and is currently the world's second most populous country after India, with a population exceeding 1.4 billion. Chinese President Xi Jinping called on the country to stick to peaceful development, uphold international fairness and justice, and practice true multilateralism in a speech delivered at a grand reception held in Beijing to mark the event. Disha Anissa de Guzman, Rangan Chakuntep Mahanakon, SMN News, Pratethay, Sawadika.
Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates' first female astronaut is set to embark on a space mission on 2024. Gratiro Omori has the story.
Dubai Crown Prince Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum gave updates on the trailblazing space expeditions that will happen next year. In a recent meeting he chaired at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, or MBRSC, Sheikh Hamdan offered a glimpse of the groundbreaking Emirati space ventures awaiting to take place in the next few months. To note, the UAE just achieved a landmark victory in the history of the global space industry when it sent Emirati astronaut Sultan Al Neyadi to the International Space Station, or ISS, in March 2023, which made him the first Arab astronaut in history to embark on a long-haul space mission and the first Arab to perform a spacewalk. Dr. Al Neyadi returned to Earth last month after spending 6 months on the largest modular space station in low Earth orbit. Despite this milestone journey, the UAE is wasting no time in taking the next steps in its space program. The Dubai Crown Prince revealed that Emirati astronauts Mohammed Al Mula, a former Dubai police helicopter pilot, and the UAE's first female astronaut, Nora Al Matrushi, would embark on a trailblazing space missions after graduation in 2024. They were chosen to be part of the UAE Astronaut Corps in 2021 before being sent to train with NASA in Houston, Texas. As if these historic achievements were not enough, the oil-rich Gulf nation in the past has announced its plans to explore the asteroid and fly by Venus in an ambitious mission set to begin in 2028. Additionally, the UAE plans to launch MBZ-SAT, the Arab world's most advanced satellite to date, by next year. The Dubai Crown Prince said that the UAE has set high standards for space excellence as it aims to raise the country's status in the global space industry and become a major player in shaping the future of space exploration. Reporting from Dubai, this has been Gratero Omori, SMNI News, United Arab Emirates.
As a private individual, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy has something to say regarding the reduction of tariff on certain imported products. Val Divina Gracia reports.
On his program Powerline this Tuesday, October 3rd, Pastor Apollo stated that local products in the country would suffer if imported products were more favored. According to Pastor Apollo, local businesses and products of the country need to be considered.
Kahit na si Senator Jaime Marcos tumutol doon Kasi bumabaha ang mga imported products dito na walang tariff. Kawawa naman yung mga local products natin, no? Naluluma. Para sa akin, maawa din tayo sa mga local na ating mga local na mga businesses natin dito na natatalo ng dahil sa walang taripa ang imported products na bumabaha sa ating bansa. Sino nakikinabang doon? Marami lang mga Pilipinong tulad natin. Pero paano naman yung mga nagnenegosyo? No. Isa lang alang din natin ang kanila. Maliban kung gusto talaga nating patayin ang industriyang lokal ng mga lokal na mga negosyante. Kawawa naman.
To recall, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. rejected the proposal to temporarily reduce tariffs on imported rice. It should be noted that several farmer groups have expressed concern about certain negative effects if this measure were to be implemented. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Val Divina Gracia, SMNI News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. When you decide to do something, the universe will conspire to make it happen.
And for our Christmas countdown is 82 days to go before Christmas. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit smninewschannel.com or follow us on our official media accounts on Rumble and Facebook, Twitter. For God and Country, I'm Deivid Lira.
For God and Country, I'm Federico Veloso. Thank you for watching Newsline World. And thank you to our beloved pastor, Pastor Apollo Quiboloy, for the opportunity to be part of this program. May you continue to listen on SMNI as it's delivered nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news. Because SMNI is your source of credible news.